Hi, I'm Mike Peel, the host of your Full Crew podcast today. And I just want to say thank you to our sponsors, SAIC. We've got a new one, Rubric Law, Fixar, and DroneUp. We've got some great topics we're going to be discussing today. Talking about a new technology called NiDAR. We're going to be talking about a suite of GPS and GNSS technologies called PNT. We're going to be talking about Elon Musk, SpaceX, returning with some good news about their Starship. And finally, ChatGPT getting out of the box with AutoGPT and Baby AGI. I have Maggie Schuster here subbing in for Dawn today. So this is her second appearance on the Full Crew. And actually, the second person to appear twice. Actually, you got beat by John McHale. But we've got some great guests to talk about these articles today. I'm going to start with Ananya. Introduce yourself. Tell us a little bit about what you do.
Thank you, Mike. Hello, everyone. I am Ananya Narain, Vice President Consulting at Geospatial World. My background is I'm an economist by profession, by education, and I tend to look at what is the economic impact and value proposition of technology in the world economy and society. I do this globally, I do this regionally, and I do this for every technology segment that is in the geospatial space. So I look forward to seeing where this conversation today is headed.
Well, absolutely happy to have you on. And we also have Joshua. So Joshua, tell us a little bit about yourself.
Yeah, thanks for having me on the show. I'm Joshua Resnick. I am the CEO and one of the co-founders of Parallel Flight Technologies. We are a company that is building heavy lift, long duration, autonomous drones for a number of use cases, including fighting wildfires, agricultural use cases, industrial use cases, and military use cases. We're located in Northern California. Prior to this, I was at Tesla. I led the system architecture and electrical engineering for the Tesla semi-truck program, which was kind of a lot of fun. And I picked this article on about SpaceX today and the Starship that launched that's going to be coming up, but we'll talk about that when we get into the article. So glad to be here.
Yeah, and actually we're going to be doing that real soon. I just want to say thank you to Rotor Dynamics Corp for participating in the chat on LinkedIn. They're saying good morning and howdy from Texas.
Nice.
So yeah, you kind of mentioned it, spoiled the reveal here, but we're going to be talking about Starship. So why'd you pick this article and what did you think was interesting about it?
So, yeah, I mean, I picked this article just because I've been following Starship, as many people have, over the past couple of years. Like I mentioned, I was at Tesla. I was part of the Tesla semi-truck development program, and so I think there's a lot of shared DNA between Tesla and SpaceX and how these projects are approached. So I'm seeing a very similar kind of approach with Starship development, and like I have to admit, when I saw the first Starship. And it was like this big stainless steel monstrosity that looked all wavy and like poorly put together. And I thought it was actually kind of a joke. Like, is this even serious? And then after, seeing it do, some of those early launches, like watching it do its belly flop maneuver and come, do its reentry burn and all of that stuff. And then eventually sticking the landing, I was like, oh my gosh, this is actually real. Like, this is incredible. And then comparing and contrasting with the SLS program, and it's like this incredible NASA boondoggle that costs apparently it was supposed to cost only $2 billion to launch each time, and now SLS, it's like they're saying that it actually costs more like $4 billion to launch, and then comparing it to the kind of economics that we're going to see with something like Starship, like even if they don't even get close to, I think something like $20 million a launch, like even if they're, 5 times that, like it's still so much more economical than what is being discussed for SLS. So anyway, those are like some of the things. This is such an incredible program in every way. It's the biggest rocket ever built. It's bigger than the Saturn V that took the astronauts to the moon. It's just such a radically different architecture from anything that's ever been seen before. Totally reusable, both stages. That's just incredible. The super heavy booster, it has 33 engines. It's just incredible, like, to see this kind of redundancy and just the scale that this thing is being built at. The materials that are being used, like stainless steel, and just how counterintuitive it is that material could be good in this context. It's just incredible.
Yeah, actually, just really briefly, can you say why that material is good in this context? Because it is rather counterintuitive, even according to Musk.
Yeah.
So
yeah, I mean, I'm no expert here.
Because it's heavier, right?
Yeah, it's definitely heavier. But again, I'm not an expert. But my understanding is that a lot of it has to do with the thermal characteristics. So being able to handle the extreme cold of the propellant load, and then also the extreme hot of reentry. I think that's some of the reasons. And then the fact that it can be, it can be manufactured at a lower cost than something like carbon fiber. So, but again, I'm not an expert, so I hope I haven't misspoken there. And then I think, like, some other category breaking things about this aircraft or spacecraft is, just the payload capacity. So 150 tons to outer space is just phenomenal. I've cut a couple other stats here. So cost per, like, really the key metric, like when you think about a launch system, is cost of kilogram to the moon, for example, or to orbit. So here's a couple stats real quick. SLS, which is the space launch system that the NASA program, that costs $31,000 per kilogram to the moon, versus Starship, which as low as 200 kilograms and then up to $2,000 per kilogram to go to Mars. So even to Mars, it's over an order of magnitude. Well, no, it's just a little bit over an order of magnitude less expensive for a kilogram to go to Mars with Starship versus a kilogram to go to the moon with SLS. So it's just phenomenal economics.
Nanya, what are your thoughts on Starship?
I think it's very interesting, and as Joshua mentioned, I think all of us are looking at it. But I'm not a technical expert, so I do have a question, Joshua. This has been this discussion and this topic has been going on for such a long time. Are there any timelines that we are looking at now? By when can we see Starship actually going?
So it was supposed to launch today, actually. I was watching the webcast live this morning, and they had to scrub the launch because of some issue with the super heavy booster tank. So they kind of considered it a wet rehearsal, just because they had it, I think, almost fully loaded out with fuel, both stages. They just got the license from the FAA. They have a 5-year launch license. So I have a feeling like we're likely to see Starship actually take its first journey into space this week. They're not going to be landing the boosters back at Boca Chica this week. They're not going to be landing either stage at Boca Chica. They're going to put both down, I believe, I forget the location, but in the ocean, and they're going to do a controlled landing simulation out to sea for both the Super Heavy and the Starship stage. But I have a feeling we're likely to see that happen sometime this week. And if Elon has his way, we'll probably see it on 420. So we'll see what happens.
I will put fingers crossed on that.
The jokes.
Joshua, I love your excitement about this mission. I think you're very contagious. The way that I imagine, not only that it costs less to launch, but the fact is that if the payload is so much more than you can even imagine, I could see them using space. You know, that they can bring up, you think? Eventually, you know,
Yeah.
this being the mission?
Yeah, so you cut out a little bit, but I
you,
think I heard.
Oh, sorry. I was just saying that, you know, the possibilities with this mission and the possibilities of actually having such a payload that they can carry and bring heavy equipment and, you know, literally villages, you know, building villages there up in space, whether it be the moon or Mars or somewhere else. I think that is incredible. But I was wondering, what do you think in the future this could really mean?
Well, I think it's going to be just not just, but that it's really going to be open up the possibilities for, you know, the colonization on the moon and then eventually colonization on Mars. And I think you're bringing up an interesting point, though, how dynamic Starship is, because they have a few different versions. They have a refueling version of Starship, which is essentially a giant fuel tank. So the way the system works is you put one Starship up, that is the crew Starship. Then you put another one up, and that's the fueler, and it fuels the crew Starship. So then it can leave Earth's orbit and then go to either the moon or Mars. So they already have two different versions. One for or two different. They have several different versions planned. A fueling one, a crew one, and then one for launching satellites and putting other other equipment into space. So yeah, it's a very versatile platform, and I really think that this is going to be the way that we start to have a permanent settlement on the moon and then eventually Mars. And it's going to, you know, it's really a totally new chapter for humans, right? Like, it's one thing to send somebody to one of these planets and have them set foot and then come home. It is another thing to permanently establish people there. So it's a very, very exciting development.
Very.
Well, there's some other unique things even beyond the payload. So it uses methane, which is less volatile and also more affordable based on my knowledge. So that kind of does shift the paradigm completely. I mean, we've been sending rockets to space with hydrogen for as long as we've been sending rockets to space. So that's a big shift also.
Yep. Absolutely.
And I think that's kind of the intuitive mindset that you need, right? Because one of the things with the space program in general, I think sometimes it's almost overstated, especially if you look at the earlier years, how much it was just the government running this thing. It was actually very much contracted out to Northrop Grumman and others. It was more that the government was the main coordinator of the mission, right?
Yeah.
Where now the optimization, like any government job, if people have been there for years, they want to do it like the last time they did it because there's no pressure to do otherwise. So I think this does provide an opportunity to create absolutely new methods and technologies for moving heavy objects into space, which is no easy task.
Well, I will say also, do you remember when they did the study with the identical twins? And this was just recent, you know, to see the effects of space on a human body. That's another thing that, you know, with a project like this, I think it's important that we understand how we can make a similar atmosphere, you know, in these villages that can prolong the stay, because it does affect the body. And that's one thing I think we still, I'm glad that they did the study, because they can really see that there is a difference and the effects on the body. So that would be another concern, I guess, if this project is successful, that they're going to have to focus on that also.
Yeah.
Well, also, like, talking about colonization, I mean, we could even get to points of extraction of minerals from other planets without having to colonize with humans. We could colonize with autonomous systems, because different planets are going to have different atmospheres and gravity. And you know, we evolved our entire metabolism here on Earth. That's usually the big concern about spending too much time in zero G, is food is meant to go one way. So when it's floating around, that causes problems for all your organs. Same thing, blood is used to dealing under certain pressure. So slight shifts this way or that way can affect your heart. Anyway, we could talk about space forever.
Good article, Joshua.
Yeah, definitely. But we're gonna bring it down to Earth for a second. Actually, it's kind of the mix of technology in space pointing at Earth and how that affects us. So PNT, what is it? Ananya, you brought up this article. It's very interesting to me to hear a new term in this field that I thought I knew everything about, but teach us something.
Thank you, Mike. This is a very interesting topic, and I think a very relevant one. I think it's a very good shift from SpaceX to PNT as a topic in today's time, particularly when PNT, which is positioning, navigation, and timing, is critical for national infrastructure and defense, public safety and security. And name any application in the world, PNT is critical. Even for our phones, we cannot do without PNT. So in simple terms, if I have to define it, it's GPS and GNSS for us laymen's. The traditional PNT term is GPS, which we have on our phones, which we have in our cars. But over recent times, over the past couple of years, I would say, we have been seeing a lot of talk happening around the disruptions and the outage with GPS, the jamming and spoofing with the GPS system. And this has initiated a lot of debate globally, especially within the US and the Europe, on why do we need a resilient PNT systems? Why do we need to strengthen our PNT systems today so that we don't incur losses or we don't incur some major disruption in our activity tomorrow? There have been studies coming from an economics background today. There have been studies in the US, in Europe, in UK on what could be the economic loss. And if you look at it, we have a study which states that if there is a GPS outage of 30 days, it could lead up to $45 billion of loss to the world economy and society. Similarly, UK did a study. It could, if something like that happens for the UK, it could lead up to 1 billion day per loss for the UK society. So when we look at the impact that it is going to have for every major application that we have today, be it construction and engineering, transportation, your public safety, PNT is becoming critical. And the best part about it is, and people have started talking about it, is that we have new technologies. We have innovations happening in the PNT domain. We have new technology solutions, right from your anti-jamming and anti-spoofing solutions, as well as solutions which are ground-based, not space-based anymore. We have solutions in space also on the lower Earth orbit, LEO PNT satellites, companies doing amazing innovations in that field. And the best part is the governments worldwide are looking at these innovations. They are mandating resilient PNT as part of workflows. So this topic is very close to my heart. I believe that this is something that needs to be discussed much more widely than it is today. The socioeconomic losses that it brings with it, plus the technology innovations that are happening in this field are so important to be talked about. I felt this is the right platform to share about it.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we had previously in the discussion talked about an outage in the Denver airport area, Denver airport and surrounding area. And our guest at the time brought up a whole host of possibilities for what caused the outage, including possible state actors or atmospheric interference. Or just the critical failures of systems just all at the same time, all there as possibilities. But what's striking is, well, what do you do when it's out? You know, the redundancy is not built into the system. For a system that we're using at such scale, we have a lot more redundancy built into the power grid than we do into our GPS systems. That's what that incident kind of taught me. Joshua, what do you think?
Yeah, I mean, this is a topic I've thought about a little bit. You know, it becomes so obvious that we have made ourselves very, very dependent on this one particular technology. And so the obvious thought is, well, what happens if it goes down? And so maybe I have a question. What, I can understand something like a solar flare knocking out a number of GPS satellites and potentially causing some disruption. But what are the different scenarios, from like a disruption to a full outage, and what are the causes of those different scenarios? Like what could actually bring down the GPS system?
Solar flares, actually, that's a good point, Joshua. I was just having a discussion with somebody how nobody is looking at solar flares yet. If I share my experience interacting with the stakeholders across the US and the European government, solar flares is not a topic that is coming into focus. But if you look at the disruptions, the different disruptions that can happen, it could be a war act as well. It could be a war crime as well. And I think we have seen several indications of it in the current war that is happening in Russia and Ukraine, with Russia practically stating that they would bring the GPS down. So it could be a war crime. It could be, I don't see GPS outage to happen that soon, but there are different examples. There are many examples today all over the world where this has been happening at a faster pace, sometimes intentional, sometimes unintentional. But the intentional ones are becoming a concern. It has happened in Asia quite often. If you look at the borders, if you look at national borders, it has happened in Nordics as well. And I think these intentional activities, the intentional jamming and spoofing is causing a concern today, that it may one day lead to GPS outage. What will cause it, we don't know. But there is, it provides us with an approach, it provides us to think that there is a possibility that one day there will be a GPS outage. What then?
Maggie, what are your thoughts?
I was thinking of the effects it will have on communities in general. And the worst is, and you kind of touched on it, Mike, about power outages, and because it affects everyone, right? Then we get a little bit more fire under our motivation to solve problems when it does happen, and that's why we have generators and backups for power. And I would imagine that will also be the case if we start losing our GPS. It will affect us, on our daily living, and unfortunately that's what it takes for lawmakers to make laws, and for science to pour money into a certain area, because it does affect more people and our daily living. And I think that's really what's going to give a stimulus to from like this, where when we do lose it, what do we do, and how do we bounce back from that? So I thought that was interesting. It was a great article.
Yeah, fear could be a motivator, but the article is more optimistic than I think our conversation is letting on here.
Sorry.
So I do want to draw that out, which is that these redundancy is possible, and that we do have a host of technologies that can make these systems more resilient. So now that we've posited all the fears, maybe Ananya, you want to highlight a little bit more of the positive.
Yeah, I think very nicely put out, Mike. I think we have highlighted the fears, but the good news is that we have amazing new innovative technologies currently in the field, which are already being deployed all over the world. So we have terrestrial beacons, we have terrestrial positioning systems, we have LEO PNT solutions. And the best part is the government worldwide is putting it out as something that national critical infrastructure systems have to look at. So if you look at the executive order passed by the United States, the 13905, which specifically asks to strengthen resilient PNT systems. Similarly, the European Commission has already started doing test beds for innovative solutions to develop these resilient PNT systems. My interaction with the industry as well as the users showed that people are willing to look at alternative solutions, complementary solutions, which can help them be prepared in case such a situation arises. God forbid, I don't think it will, but it's good to know that the technology is advancing in such a manner and at such a pace that we are almost there when it comes to looking at alternative solutions with regards to PNT.
Well, I'm certainly excited for it because I'm the type of person that everything's wired in just so we make sure nothing fails,
Yeah.
right? So whenever you're dealing with technologies that travel over spectrum, any level of redundancy and also intelligent systems to kind of handle the redundancy too, because knowing when you failed is actually half the problem sometimes,
Oh,
right?
yes.
Like it's trying to connect and it can't get anything, but it keeps drilling that connection. Meanwhile, there's perfectly acceptable bandwidth or alternative signal that can provide the right information. So I think from what I read in the article, that seems to be the way that things are moving, and that it can't happen any sooner, to be honest. Yeah. Okay, so we're going to take just a short break to thank our sponsors, SAIC, Fixar. We're adding Jonathan Ruprecht. He's a cool guy. He's actually going to be on the Tilt next week on Tuesday. And also want to thank DroneUp, who joined the previous cycle. So we have a lot of people today. Must have had a good thumbnail that's drawing people in on the episode. So if you have any questions, feel free to shoot them at us. We're willing to answer anything, including articles we've already talked about, which include PNT and the Starship. We're going to be moving on to the third article, which is Maggie's. So tell us a little bit about this new term, NiDAR, and what it means.
Yeah, and I'm kind of glad I was the next one, because this NiDAR couldn't function without the PNTs. Because basically what, it's a detection, for nefarious drones and other unmanned aerial systems. But what's important, and of course, we're all concerned about, what's happening in the war right now with Russia and Ukraine. But we also have homeland concerns with like critical infrastructure, civilian life, and military. So with this NiDAR, it was created by Mars, MARSS, and it's a smart and intuitive command and control system that I'm kind of reading this, but utilizes cutting edge sensors, effectors, and AI technology by optimizing the operator interface, automating detection, and reducing response. NiDAR identifies potential threats more quickly and effectively. So right now, they have to use a lot of sources to make it simple. They have, right now to detect like something nefarious, they have to bring a lot of sources to the base. And with this technology, it's all already encompassed. And so it gives them more of a faster response time to go out and find out exactly what it is. Is it a threat? Is it not? Can you hear me still, guys?
Yeah, we can hear you. It's actually good. Joshua that dropped off.
Oh, I thought it was. So I thought it was interesting. It's a short article. It's just an intro, but I think it's important. I think.
Yeah. So, yeah, taking a look at this, what I saw was basically a consolidation of disparate systems, but also again like the idea of intelligently switching, but like when to favor which signal over the other for threat detection. And we brought up counter UAS multiple times on all our shows. I actually would commend our audience to take a look at some of those episodes. I think we just most recently had Defense Solutions on the dawn of drones. But yeah, there's really no drone industry without a counter drone industry, and also what we're seeing just from the little whispers we get back from what's going on in the ground in the Ukraine is that counter drone technology is just necessary at all. So that's kind of my take on this. Seems like it was an intelligent way to consolidate all these systems in one place. Any other thoughts? Joshua,
well, I want to
Ananya?
say that article came from C-Hub, and that was one of our sponsors, where they bring all these articles and information together. And again, I thought that was a real neat highlight, specifically about NiDAR.
So
I
just
mean, go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No.
Just a question, is the NiDAR system, it's been demonstrated successfully, does that mean it's been tested successfully, or it's been deployed as well?
Actually, in the UK, they did the testing. I'm sure that there's more, just test it out and to prove that it is efficient. But yeah, the first time, and this is when they just mentioned it, because it was kind of an intro that they've tried it in the UK.
Yeah,
Joshua, you had something?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's really interesting, this, combining, sensor fusion on the counter drone side, because we see a lot of sensor fusion on the drone side. Like, for example, in our aircraft, there's a lot of sensor fusion that goes on in the flight controller to combine GPS, optical, LiDAR, all these different signals together, for its own positioning system. But now to see that on the detection side, I think that's pretty cool. And I think it's really going to be necessary, to find all the different types of threats that are out there, from, very small drones to, very high speed drones. Like, there's just a lot of variation between these different types of targets. So using a hybrid approach like this, I think, is the right way to go.
Yeah, and you see how important the PNTs are. If we didn't have, a location, then this technology would be useless.
Of course.
Right.
PNT is critical to everything. And just speaking on NiDAR.
My love life, but I'm just teasing.
When I look at NiDAR and the data and the different sensor fusion that is happening here, I think it's very interesting, and how economical it is. That is very interesting to see, because when you're fusing different data, different sensors, you're definitely making the system more economical. And the application of it, particularly for national security and for public safety, I think it's tremendous. So I'm really looking forward to reading about it more.
Yeah, it's a lot more.
Yeah, and getting deployed in other contexts too.
Exactly.
Right. So this is definitely an early days article, but I think the consolidation of sensor data into one intelligent readout, because this is a thing, like, tech people like myself get really excited about all the data, and we'll get all the data, right? And then you take a look at it, and unless you're willing to spend 10 weeks to figure out what it all means, it's really not useful to end users, especially end users in the field. In this context, where seconds can be critical, right? Because it's very hard to map intent onto a flying object when it's not squawking back. And when do you intercept that object? When can you intercept that object legally? All that is being worked out, but we really kind of have to have all of these systems working together to actually get to that point. We are not there, and we're actually at risk every day that we're not. I'm kind of surprised at the slowness at which we've kind of handled the counter drone equation. And it's not for technologies out there, but I think it's also kind of that gray space in regulation. It's like, oh yeah, I could see where the thing is, but I can't take it down because that'd be against the law. So how do you empower the right people in the right moment? How do you verify that they should have the power in that moment? I think all this stuff needs to be worked out, and worked out soon. We've seen some progress on it, but I could be happy to see more. Any other final thoughts on Maggie's article before we move on to the AI apocalypse?
Yeah. Go ahead.
No, Joshua. Go.
Yeah, I mean, I think Mike, you're talking about we have to get this counter drone stuff right, and we've got to do it soon. I think you're bringing up a really important principle because, drone technology has democratized access to the sky, and it makes it, just as it lowers the cost for a lot of, industrial applications, and we've seen that across the board, and it's been a huge economic boon in so many areas. It also allows bad actors to do things at a lower cost and at a lower risk to themselves than ever before, and that's, I think, almost a great segue into the discussion about AI that's coming up, because AI is another one of those technologies where we are drastically increasing the power that not just governments but smaller entities can have in a way that's never been seen before, and how the effects of that really are going to cut both ways. Obviously, there's a lot of fear around AI, but there's also a tremendous amount of promise, and it's still yet to be seen, which way which of those fears are actually well founded and which are just unfounded, but there's just so many unknowns right now. But what we do know is that we are increasing the capability of humans, but we're doing it in a very democratized way, very fast, and that's going to cut both ways and have a lot of unanticipated, unpredictable consequences. And there's a lot of other technologies like that, biotechnologies, so on and so forth. But anyway, I just think that's as we see these new technologies coming, developing so quickly, what are the consequences going to be? We have no idea. There's just so many things that are going to happen so fast.
You brought a really good point, Joshua, because that's a very hot topic. AI specifically. It's the bad, what do you call them, bad players that really kind of spoil the whole bunch of apples, basically. But just as soon as they invent, and when I say technology finds different ways, like altering your face, and then all of a sudden it's hard to detect if it's real or not real, just like those pictures of the Pope, if they're real or not real. I think that technology is going to demand that we find ways of still staying on top of the technology so that we don't have bad players involved and harming, whether it be our communities, our safety, so forth. And so that is a very, very big subject. It really is. Sorry, Mike, I didn't mean to.
Yeah, I think we're gonna. No, it's okay. We'll kind of dive into some of the questions posed by Joshua's answer in the next segment, but I do want to get to Christopher Jensen's statement here. He said we should check out DroneSense's new tech that would make, it's super fan Chris. DroneSense's new tech that would make the drone undetectable to most CUAS technology. So there's always the arms race. To Maggie's comment though about bad actors spoiling it for everybody. If you invent a knife and you're surprised somebody got stabbed, you have to look at creating laws around the usage of knives. You might say, well, we already have a law on murder. Well, that's good then. So then we use that one. But then that discussion has to happen. That's the law we use. We don't write a new one. And now we all have to be aware that this is something that can be done with this tool, because ultimately we're just talking about tools. Now, though, I do think AI, unlike the internet or dumb pipes, as I like to call it, poses some different questions for us. Because essentially, I think the real thing that this technology or the advancement that is being recognized now is the amount of things that can be learned by a machine learning model is only increasing. And learning things used to be, a human or a dog trick. But we're slightly better at it than dogs, I would say, right? On average, that's the evidence I'm seeing out there in the world. This technology, or the reason that I was joking about the AI apocalypse, is because most of the AI models we've been working with are kind of just limited to the user input. This allows with kind of just the user kicking the ball down the hill for the AI to roll infinitely in some cases. So what AutoGPT and Baby AGI are essentially just task managers stapled onto ChatGPT. In fact, the AutoGPT adds this extra layer where you're also asking it to provide its reasoning, which kind of creates like let's call it a momentary sense of consciousness, but not that it's aware, but it's forcing itself in its own algorithm to state what somebody would think. So you can set it on a task like manage my tweets. And I want my profile to be the best tech podcast profile out there. Give me your reasoning for why you would select certain tasks and how you would manage my profile. And AutoGPT's response to that question is actually, I will look up articles about technology. I will post and retweet articles and tweets about technology. Some pitfalls I might have in that process are retweeting things that people don't like and posting things that are controversial. In order to mitigate that over the course of time, I will listen to user feedback and find articles that are more to their liking. So that's quite a big jump. And I expect more spam on Twitter literally tomorrow because of this, from where we were even a month ago. And you get into what is known as the gray goose situation, or potentially we could get into the gray goose situation, which is the idea of if you give an AI the task of creating paper clips, it'll eventually just atomize the whole universe and turn it into a pile of gray goo because it's got no sense of human existential or no sense of existential threat by doing that. So what do we think about AI that can assign itself its own tasks and interoperate with APIs on the internet? Do we think this is a paradigm shift, or is it just going to be more noise in a week or so?
Who's supposed to start?
Whoever wants to go.
I mean, I think it's going to be a paradigm shift for sure. I mean, like there's so many things that I'm already using ChatGPT for that are mundane tasks. Like I have a list that I downloaded and I have to filter it in this very complex way. And instead of me handing it off to an employee to go take care of, or an intern, I'm saying, hey, ChatGPT, can you sort this list and figure it out? Now, if I could take that one step further and say, to an autonomous agent, like, build a website, build a frame, build a website that does this, and this, and then I can come make the final tweaks and publish it. Like, it's going to be huge. And of course, there's a lot of downsides that one could look at, but I think it is clearly going to be a major time savings thing, and it's going to increase productivity in many ways.
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big fan of GitHub CoPilot for the reason that I think it's so specific. But they're going to be adding, I think it's called, I can't remember, it was a CoPilot X. But they're going to be stapling on the ChatGPT interface, which is kind of the big barrier to that being as useful as I want it to be right now. Like, it'll complete my lines of code, but I kind of have to know exactly what line of code I'm going to be writing. Whereas this, I could be like, okay, I need a script that does X, Y, and Z and connects to these APIs. The answer it will generate will be about 80% wrong, but then now I'm only, or not 80% wrong, 20% wrong, but then I'm only kind of going through and tweaking, kind of picking out the problems. And I think it just turns things that actually we didn't think were boilerplate code into boilerplate code now. I mean, I was coding like a little fun game as a side project the other day, and things from one file to the next that I had already written were just getting auto-filled. So I didn't have to like think through that process of how do I map this back to what I wrote over here. So yeah, I think productivity is going to be huge. I think now if you connect that to the internet and give it the ability to continually write that task list for itself, yeah, we'll see more good and bad, but I think we're going to see things that will fundamentally shift what we even think we should be working on, period.
Yeah.
Right? What do we as humans work on if an AI could actually just handle that? I think that it does bring up the concerns, though. Whatever you do in public now is ultimately learnable by a giant corporation that will steal your data and add it to its model, which we saw with Samsung recently. They didn't even realize they were using ChatGPT, putting in information about security, and now it's baked into the model. And Samsung has no recourse because it was in the terms of service. So I think there's going to be discussions that we're going to have about that. IP is one thing that is very, very hard with our case law system to undermine. So I think we'll see some battles around that. Anybody else have a take?
I would just like to add on to this because we were having a discussion internally on generative AI just last week. And one of the things that Maggie pointed out was on the bad actors. So of course, the discussion when we start talking about AIML, the first thing that comes to mind is how will it probably be used negatively? But for me, somebody who has been using ChatGPT to do mundane tasks, I have found it to be, I wouldn't say very much useful, but it has been to a certain level of extent. I would say it has improved my productivity. So I am definitely looking forward to seeing how the autonomous agents are going to improve my productivity further. I still believe it's still at a very experimental stage. There is a lot of discussions that need to happen. There's a lot of discussions with in relation to regulations, in relation to data ethics, privacy, and all of those need to be taken into consideration. But I do agree with, as Joshua mentioned, I think it's going to be a paradigm shift, especially from a geospatial industry point of view, where so much of data is coming from different sensors. I think AI is just going to transform and revolutionize how geospatial industry is going to function in the future.
Yeah, I think the coolest thing about it is we built so many technologies that could produce mountains of data that we have no ability to weed through.
Yeah.
Like we could even pose the question against that data, but we still have to go through the mundane task of filtering through it, right?
Yes.
So that's why I like GitHub CoPilot and other programs like that. If we train these models more specifically, where their veracity is much higher, like more in the 97 to 98% range, then we can query our data in natural language. And I mean, that's the essence of scientific, kind of endeavor, is to ask questions about the world. And I think that's a great opportunity we'll see. Yeah, there's going to be bad people out there, but I think it just becomes, arms race, but now this is the new field in which the arms race takes place on, right? Maggie, any comments to add? Did we lose you?
Looks like she's frozen.
She's thinking very hard about her answer. If anybody else wants to chime in on what I just said, feel free.
Yeah, I mean, I have another perspective as well, that these large language models, and this is a little bit off the topic of these autonomous agents, but I asked ChatGPT a question. I asked it to describe the experience looking from the perspective of a narcissist. Okay, so this is totally off topic from like querying large data and stuff like that, and it gave me an incredibly deep response, and it made me think that because the large language model has read so many different human perspectives, and it has synthesized all of that, it's able to give an answer that's not it's not just smart, it actually had wisdom in it. And that was kind of shocking to me, because it was like, this thing may have no internal experience of the world, but yet because it has synthesized so much human experience into the model, it's able to give an answer that's actually quite profound. And that's a very different type of application than a mundane task like, reconfiguring a spreadsheet or doing something on GitHub or sifting through huge amounts of data to look for some kind of signal. And it was just shocking to me how powerful it was at this kind of totally this application that was really on a different dimension of what we think of when we think of data. And it took me back. It took me aback. Like I don't know what else to say about it. Then it really took me aback that there's something very, very powerful here.
Yeah, I put a lot of thought into that because it's very easy to anthropomorphize technology, and this one in specific, I think the case is larger because it's responding to us in our language, right? And in an intelligible way, in a way that's sometimes novel. And I mean, but think about it this way also. I mean, what else would you expect from something that was able to synthesize the entirety of the human and of what humans have put out on the internet, right, to describe their world, their feelings, their entire existence? If you're going to put that query to it, it should come back with something human if it's anywhere near useful.
That's right.
Yeah, it's not to make that less remarkable or profound, but I think there's also a double-edged sword to that, where we brought this up. I think it was literally on the last podcast or the podcast before. People could unintentionally read therapeutic insights into it, and this actually isn't the first time that we've seen that in computing. There were some experiments, I think, in the 70s or 80s. Early 80s, if it was in the 80s, where they, pretended that the computer was a therapist. They were not expecting the absolute emotional response that people had, to the point where they thought it could actually give them answers to their life's problems. So, I mean, it can, if the question is soft enough, but I would be, I would look for other sources and compile other sources before making a decision that it would make on any line that's too human, exactly because it's just, you're hitting like a random average based on the words that you came in with, and it might not be the best response. We all go to and put in our search for whatever medical pain that comes into us on Google now, with the knowledge that the answer might be terribly wrong, but at least I'll know the terms I need to tell my doctor. Right. But we had to learn that, because at first the same thing happened with Google, where we put in that answer and WebMD, this must have all the answers. Oh my God, I have 10 forms of cancer. This is, I think we're gonna learn what the limits are to what this could produce on that line. But just to bring it back, though, talking about autonomous agents looking out for us, if you're trying to find an answer to a really, really tough question in your life, when is the right time to buy a home, right? What do I need to know when I'm talking to a mortgage broker? These are the questions that I think this technology actually is able to answer right away. And you be precise. Actually, you might not be surprised if you don't have somebody in your network of friends or family. These are business decisions or life decisions that you sometimes have no mentor for. And I think this could kind of be a crutch to help those people actually get that experience. Yeah. You're frozen though. My personal fear is the information is not accurate because I've used it enough to know that I have to double check certain things. So I'm always afraid of somebody not, and then, you know, in most cases that's not consequential. People get crap wrong every day, right? In these few edge cases, it will be consequential, and I think you know, that's the purview of regulators, and they're kind of already on that in some countries. What was the other one? The replacing jobs? Well, this new task manager can. I think that's kind of one of the things that was keeping it in the box. I could literally create an employee from my imagination with this now. They actually won't be cheaper. So when you look at this guy Fireship did a video where he tried to have one of these, I think it was baby AGI, but he essentially set it up to get the memes, write his script, find videos of or clips of tech people talking about these new technologies, and even create graphics. So it did all those things. The output was crap still. So we're not quite there, but he basically reinvented himself from the ground up. So eventually you will be able to, as somebody builds a model specifically for that type of thing, replace the worker. And I think the things that governments have to be most concerned about is, yeah, this is just like every other technology and we will learn how to adapt to it. But will it be like the printing press and we'll have 300 years of war before we say, wasn't the printing press awesome? Or will it be something more like the internet where we were actually able to integrate it into our lives and just, you know, build new things, completely new things on top of it? And honestly, we won't know. You know, the wave is hitting us right now. We kind of just got to ride it. That's my take. Any last thoughts? Because we're coming up on the hour. So Ananya, what's your final thoughts for the episode?
I think it was good discussion. I think we ended at a very great and interesting topic on AI. The discussion on AI is much needed today, as much as discussion on PNT, I would say. But from a regulatory point of view, I think governments have a very big task at hand. The technology is moving at a very rapid pace. Whichever technology we spoke about today, each and every technology is moving at a rapid pace, and the government have a very crucial role to play. And we as economists have a very crucial role to play to make everybody understand what is going to be the impact of economic impact on socio and economic progress of the world.
Can't be in more agreement. Joshua, last thoughts?
Yeah, all very, very interesting topics. All of them are going to change what our lives look like in probably, you know, shorter timescales than we think possible.
Yeah, I think that's true. It's been quite a few months, especially with AI. Yeah. And I think it will integrate into other technologies and other things that are already amazing us. Yeah, Maggie, what's your final thoughts? Then we got to head out. Well, I hope so. I mean, that's kind of the fun of talking about tech. I mean, you're gonna see things that you couldn't imagine even a month ago. All right, I have to actually close the podcast out. I'm getting text messages. All right. I want to thank everybody for joining us, Ananya and Joshua, for providing great insights. I also want to thank the audience for participating today. Rotor Dynamics and Chris, we love you. You're super fans. Also want to thank sponsors, Ruprecht Law, Fixar, Drone Up, and SAIC. My apologies. We got some great stuff coming up this week, and you'll see that in the outro cards now. For now, we are out here.